Hello, everybody. I'm a practicing therapist and a doctoral student of psychology. Today, I wanted to go over something we discussed yesterday regarding that attractive men don't always know that they're attractive. And I briefly brought it up yesterday, which was my aim for that video. But I didn't put a lot of clarifications. I just mentioned that this is a potential dynamic that shows up. And today, with research, I wanted to describe why this is the case. First of all, is it true that some attractive men don't always know they are attractive? Yes. I actually have very much firsthand experience with this. My significant other, who I've been with for many, many years, I find him very attractive, but he didn't even know that he was an attractive person, even when we were together. And actually, something that's even more interesting, which we will touch on a little bit later, he even mentioned to me that him being attractive was not even something that he wanted me to verbally express often, and he would rather me address more often that he is useful to some extent, that I can see his efforts and I see that he cares. So what I do is I balance both. I tell them that he's attractive, but I also appreciate the efforts that he, gives to me and shows me, which of course I appreciate. He's an amazing person. And it really got me thinking about where all of this comes from, not just him, but a lot of men, their childhood, the way they were raised, and why men are so, attractiveness for men is such a scarce, it's a topic that's not very given often, whereas women, that's pretty much majority of what women are expected to be like. And men, it's almost like people don't even say it even if it's true. And I think that's just a true dynamic, and I feel like that's why so many men who are attractive won't know they're attractive, because it's not something that sometimes they're even allowed to say or feel. And the first point is probably the one that maybe people don't even it's a dynamic that I'm seeing more often, but I don't know if it's always been the case. But I actually see that a lot of other men envy attractive men. And instead of learning from these men and trying to figure out how can I be attractive as well, or this guy's such a, maybe he's also a good guy, let me get along with him, these men actually isolate them and make them feel almost like unworthy and different. And I literally see this in my comment section often. If a man says, let's say I made a video, this is a concept that happens when women are attracted to you based on research. And some men are like, yeah, that's been happening to me my whole life. I never knew it. And a lot of comments will be like, you're making that up, or it's not true. And there's multiple comments completely bashing on this gentleman who is feeling understood and appreciated and understanding and learning that he's attractive. But he was completely shot down by all of these other gentlemen in the comment section. It happens a lot. And it's so sad because he is describing something that is clearly an attractive gentleman based on the research that we were talking about in that video. And so other men envy them, which makes him feel like, oh, this means I'm not attractive, because women at an early age, they're often taught, okay, if a woman is mean to you, it's a potential that she's envious of you. Men, I don't think, are taught that way. They swallow it, for what it is. Oh, if a man is saying this, or if someone's saying this, it must be true. Instead of thinking, maybe this guy envies me. He's not really taught to clock that nearly as often as women are. So he has no idea that that's why some of these men are tearing him down. The next point is that women are often less direct than men about if they find you attractive, even more particularly so with mentally stable women. And I think what's interesting about this point, and we have made a video on this particularly, is a lot of women who are a little bit more direct, or maybe they have emotional dysregulation, they are emotionally dysregulated, they are more comfortable initiating and saying that they're attracted to someone. However, what ends up happening is these types of women are typically unstable. And if she doesn't heal, what happens is if you're not giving her what she wants, she'll jump to the next guy and she may cheat on you, which will eventually make your self-esteem feel as if you might feel like you're not attractive. And it just creates that same narrative. However, typically, not all the time, typically a little bit more emotionally stable women, they tend to be less direct with their attractiveness, because that's just the way typically women are, and that's the way they're raised. They're less assertive and they're less dominant typically. And so what happens is, even if a woman finds a man attractive, she may just look at him, give him eye contact, not even realizing that that's what she's feeling or knowing, or she's not really sure what the next idea is, because a lot of women are used to men being direct with them ever since they were young. And actually, they were taught to not be direct and not speak up and stay quiet and stay to themselves, typically, even at an early age. And so even if she finds someone attractive, she might not do anything about it. That's just her reality. And I know it's annoying, but if I tell you otherwise, I'm lying to you, and I don't want to lie to you. Is it true that some women will chase these attractive men? Yes, but the reality of that is it's not fully because he's attractive, and it's not because she is mentally stable. Like, there's a dynamic that I talked about in another video, and the short version of it is that he's actually meeting a need of hers that she didn't get in childhood, like father issues, etc. And he probably is also not mentally stable himself. And so that dynamic is just creating their childhood wounds. It's actually not about attraction at all, typically, but I've made a video on that, so you can look at that if you're curious. The next one is that attraction is not physical looks necessarily. This research was conducted, and that is in the description box, but there's so many of them. Basically, the best way to put it is attraction, especially for men, is also about how you earn the other person in a social context. This is not the case with women. Men are often taught that they have to earn love, unfortunately, and I also made a video on that. And so him being attractive is not just his looks, it's also what he can give, how he earns that, how he treats this person, and those combinations are usually what is a person who's attractive. And so a lot of men who are naturally like that, they're not going to know that they have that because it's a combination of things. And the example I want to give you that kind of translates, or it's the first thing I thought about, is if a person is well off. And so I'm going to share a little bit of self-disclosure, and if you don't want to hear it, you can skip maybe 2 minutes ahead, and then you can hopefully see the next point. I grew up in a family that is considered, I guess, well off, but I didn't know that growing up, and I promise I didn't. And maybe you guys are going to think, you're going to possibly think, how did you not know once I describe it? But I promise I didn't know. Or you're going to think that doesn't sound well off. I don't know what side of the version you're going to be on, but I had no idea. In fact, at one point, and I understand that this feels very, like, perhaps entitled or what, I don't know, spoiled. I don't know what the word is. I actually did not know. I thought we were like on the bottom half of the economic perspective. I didn't understand. And I'll explain. So I thought, based on what maybe the world says wealthy looks like, is like designer products and expensive cars, things like that. We didn't have those things at all, but my parents had multiple properties, like many, many, many properties. I don't think I remember ever a time where they didn't have multiple assets. And when I say assets, no loans on them. They all paid everything with cash. But I thought that was like I didn't know that was a wealthy thing to do. I didn't understand that at all. No one ever told me. And it didn't look flashy, so I didn't understand. Like, my parents both drove used cars. My parents actually never bought a new car because the depreciation, but I didn't know that when I was a kid. I didn't understand these things. Both my parents actually had very well-paying jobs as well, but they were jobs that I didn't know was, like, it was not something that was obviously flashy. And our house was also very, very big, but I didn't know that that meant wealth because my dad built most of it. It's not like we purchased it. He built a lot of that house. And I just assumed because my dad is very, very handy. And so I didn't know that this meant wealth at all. In fact, when I went to school, and I went to school in a more rural area, like genuinely my high school is on like a windy road. And when I went to school, a lot of folks, maybe they didn't have such a big house that we had or something like that, but they had like, their parents drove like a really expensive car, and maybe their first car was like really like a nice whatever. They came to school with like designer brands or whatever, or they had like the fancy notebooks, and my parents just got like the 99 cents notebooks for us. And I thought that meant we were not well off. And so then when I went to college and I understood people's actual situations better, I realized, oh, okay, that is the difference. And I think this is the same thing with folks who are attractive, especially men. They have the collection of little things, but they don't have like the flashy one thing that they think means attractive. And they think that means women chasing them, when that's not attraction. It's like all of these little things that add up that show, okay, this man is attractive. He maybe he has a stable wife or whatever. He has a good house. And that's not always the case. Maybe because he could be an introvert, and introverted men tend to just not communicate as directly, so he doesn't have as much chances. But maybe there are a lot of women that look at him or try to get close to him, and those signals just go right over his head. But he's still attractive. That's not something that can just be taken away. But he's been like that his whole life, so he doesn't know that that's what attraction is, because he's confused with his idea of attraction, similar to what I thought wealth was. I thought it was designer bags, not multiple properties. Now I know better. And of course, now when I say it, it sounds really silly, but I really didn't know. And it's because that's a common, I guess I thought it was a common confusion. The next one is men are not always valued for their looks by society. And I feel this is tricky because they're often valued what they can provide, which is unfortunate because it puts a lot of pressure on men. And this was the thing that my significant other really made me understand, because I think now he knows that he's attractive because I tell him that he's attractive, but he also puts very little value on me thinking he's attractive. Like, if I want to make him happy, and I still tell him he's attractive because it's true. But if I were to say, you're attractive, or I appreciate all the efforts that you do for us, the second one is going to be much more valuable to him. It's going to make him much more happy. And it's because in his mind, he's always thinking, what can I provide? What can I do? And to be honest, if I tell him, you don't need to do that for me, he can take offense to that. And so I want to respect him. But the reality and the truth is, just between me and any person who watches this video, I don't need that from him. I appreciate that he's doing that, but I don't need him to provide and be better every day. I don't want that. I'm happy with the way he is, but I don't want to disrespect how he values himself, which is why I don't do anything about it. And that's kind of hard to explain. But I think that's a lot of men, they're not valued by their looks in society. No one's going to say, oh, you're such a good looking guy. They'll say, wow, you're so hardworking, or wow, you climbed the ladder when you were only 21 years old. That's amazing. When me and my significant other go to, let's say, any place together, often one of the first things people say to me is the way I look. Something about the way I look. Maybe my outfit, I look nice, whatever it is. And what they say to him is he works hard, he's doing well for himself, he's so well-spoken. It's completely different. And I think if I can understand why at first he didn't understand he was attractive, because no one said anything. The next one is going to be a little bit more of a heavy topic, and so I may have to cut it short. But there's quite a lot of research on this, and one of them is actually incredibly recent. It was published last year, and last year when I make this video. So I'm making this in 2026. This research was 2025. And unfortunately, we saw that the participants of this research, about 20K participants, okay? We analyzed if there is some sort of reliable tendency to treat daughters more favorably. And the answer is yes. Sons are treated less favorable. They're treated more harsh. They're offered they get less praise and less protection. This is sad for me to read when I was reading this. I know it's true, and it's just unfortunate, but it is a true dynamic. Daughters are slightly more, they're treated like the way parents talk about their parents. They treat, typically based on this research, they talk more warmly about their daughter, and they're less negative about their daughter. And the difference is still small, but and it's context dependent, but it still is reliable. Like, the difference between their son and daughter is small, but almost all families had a little bit of that difference. And I think that makes a difference. So is there a global, understanding that sons are treated worse? No, but it is true that daughters do seem to be slightly treated better, which means they get more praise, which likely is if she's attractive, her dad will tell her, her mom will tell her, something like that. And the son, even if he's attractive, they will still be harsh towards him, more harsh than a daughter. And the next part of this point is the gender expectation research. 2005 is parents often expect more from their son in a way where they're more harder on him. They expect more achievement and independence, whereas their daughter, they actually expect more about her looks. And so they invest different attributes based on the child. And as we can see, attraction or physical appearance, which is not entirely attraction based on another research, that's not the main point. It's about him achieving something. And that's quite interesting. And the very last point of this video before we wrap it up is men are taught not to receive, and they're actually taught to give, which is why I think men tend to be, and I think it's getting better now, but it's important to be aware, they tend to be more susceptible to some forms of manipulation, which is really sad, but it's something to always keep in mind. Men are taught if there's something wrong in my marriage, it's my fault. Whereas women tend to be, and I see couples, like I work with many couples, I'm a therapist. He's always like, what did I do wrong? And she's always like, this is what he did wrong. Okay, that's not always the case, but it truly is an incredibly common dynamic. I want to say like 70% of the couples that I've seen is always, he doesn't do this for me, I feel unloved, and he's like, what can I do to make her happy? I have no clue what to do. So he is not thinking about himself at all. And he's like, I feel so bad. What did I do to fail? Even to the point where some of these gentlemen are literally like, my wife cheated on me. I'm a failure. What did I do to drive her away? Which, yes, it is true that some people who cheat, both men and women, they do it because they have been driven away. But it's also a choice. Like, it's still a broken commitment. And I still feel like that's not fully an excuse, because she should have honored her commitment to her husband. And she should have communicated, or if she's really that unhappy, she should have left. Like, because it's just sad. But maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But it's an unfortunate situation that we see a lot, where men often think, what can I give? What can I do? And so saying someone's attractive is actually a receiving type of concept, right? Being attractive feels like receiving. And so then what I see is, if a man has like a woman looking at him, or she likes him, or she wants to talk to him, or she's talking about him to her friends, stuff that women do when they like somebody, always talking about him, right? Thinking about him, whatever it is. He's not going to think, oh, she likes me. He might think, oh, she's friendly, or she's just like that with everybody. He's going to diminish himself, as he typically does, because he thinks he's not the receiver, he's the giver. And I think that's part of where this comes from. So in short, is it true that some attractive men don't know they're attractive? I think very much so. I think quite significantly, actually. I could be wrong. The research is in the description box. I hope this video was helpful to somebody. Please like, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.